Today, we're diving deep inside a biological engine that is so efficient, it's a marvel of nature. We're talking about the modern chicken. And we're going to explore the incredible science of how it digests fat. It's a process that's way more fascinating and important than you might think. So, let me ask you this. How do you fuel an engine that's been designed for absolute peak performance? Now, I'm not talking about some high-end race car. I'm talking about the modern broiler chicken, a bird that's literally been bred to be one of the most efficient converters of food into growth on the entire planet. These birds grow at an incredible rate, and that means their bodies are just constantly screaming for energy. To keep up with that demand, their diet has to be packed with the most energy-dense fuel we can find. And what is that perfect fuel? Well, it's fats and oils. They pack a massive punch, containing 2.25 times more energy than the grains that make up the rest of the diet. It is the ultimate high-octane fuel for these birds. Okay, but here's the catch. There's a big problem. You know how oil and water don't mix, right? Well, a chicken's gut is mostly water. This creates a huge challenge, especially for the really young birds whose digestive systems are still getting up and running. They just can't naturally produce enough of the stuff needed to break down all that fat. So, how in the world does the chicken solve this puzzle? To find out, let's go on a little journey. We're going to follow a fat droplet as it makes its way through the digestive system to see exactly how this works. Our journey kicks off in the gizzard. Think of this as the heavy machinery of the operation. It's a powerful muscle that just grinds up the feed. This physical crushing is so important because it's what frees the fat that's been locked up inside the feed particles. This is really the very first step in tackling those big blobs of fat. But the gizzard? That's just the opening act. The real chemical magic show, the part where fat is truly broken down and absorbed into the body, all of that happens a little further down the line, in the small intestine. Now, this whole process seems really complex, but we can actually boil it down to 3 main steps. This is the core chemistry of how a chicken turns fat into fuel. So we have emulsification, hydrolysis, and then absorption. Let's break them down one by one, starting with that first big one. Step 1 is emulsification, and you've actually seen this happen a million times, right in your kitchen sink. It's exactly like adding dish soap to a greasy pan. The chicken's body makes its own version of soap, called bile salts. These salts swarm the big fat globules and shatter them into millions of tiny stable droplets. Why? To massively increase the surface area for the next step. So how do these bile salts work? Well, they're pretty clever. They have this kind of split personality. One end is hydrophobic. It hates water and loves fat, so it grabs right onto the fat droplet. The other end is hydrophilic. It loves water. So these bile salts act like a perfect little bridge, connecting the fat to the watery environment of the gut, creating a nice, stable mix. All right, on to step 2, hydrolysis. Now that the fat is broken up into all those tiny droplets, a special enzyme called lipase can finally get in there and do its job. You can think of lipase as a pair of molecular scissors. It gets to work snipping the larger fat molecules apart into much smaller absorbable pieces. And now for the grand finale, getting those nutrients into the bloodstream. This is where something called micelles come in. The best way to think of them is as tiny little transport pods or taxis. The bile salts package up all those digested fatty acids into these water-soluble pods. The micelles can then travel across the gut wall to be absorbed, and they even give a ride to fat-soluble vitamins too. Okay, so that's the natural process. But, science is always looking for ways to give nature a little boost. So how can we help overcome the chicken's natural limits and make this system even more efficient? Well, it really starts with the type of fuel itself. Turns out not all fats are created equal. You have saturated fats, like from palm oil. They've got these long, straight molecular chains that pack together really tightly, which makes them harder for the bird to break down. Then you have unsaturated fats, like from soybean oil. They have these little kinks in their chains, which makes them much, much easier for those lipase enzymes to get in there and attack. And you can see that difference. I mean, it's crystal clear right here. That bar for sunflower oil is way higher, showing it's packed with those more easily digestible, unsaturated fats compared to palm oil. This simple difference in their shape has a huge impact on how much energy the chicken actually gets from its food. So this leads to the big question for nutritionists, right? What if you could make all fats, even the really tough saturated ones, just as easy to digest as the good stuff? Well, this is where supplements called fat mobilizers come into the picture. one solution is to just add extra emulsifiers right into the feed. Lecithin, for example, is a pretty good natural emulsifier, but science figured out how to make it even better. Using an enzyme, we can basically upgrade it into something called lysolecithin, a more streamlined, super efficient version that's even better at mixing fat and water. It's like giving the chicken's own digestive system a powerful assistant. Another way to do it is to boost that hydrolysis step. Remember our molecular scissors lipase? Well, what if you just added more of them directly to the feed? This helps speed up the breakdown of fats, and it's especially useful for very young birds who aren't making enough of their own lipase yet. So, okay, we've been deep in the weeds of microscopic chemistry. What does this all actually mean in the real world? Why does any of this matter? Well, it all comes down to efficiency and performance. The payoff is just huge. When a chicken can digest fat better, you see better weight gain, and you see a much improved feed conversion ratio. That's the holy grail, right? More growth for less feed. It means they absorb more nutrients, which is great for the bird, but it also lowers overall feed costs. That makes the entire system of food production more efficient and ultimately more sustainable. You know, one of our sources really hits the nail on the head with this. It says that any improvement in these 3 stages significantly enhances the bird's performance. It's a fantastic reminder that tweaking these tiny, microscopic processes can have a truly massive impact on a global scale. This is really a perfect example of how science can unlock incredible efficiency. It really makes you think, as we continue to master the science of nutrition, what are the next major hurdles we're going to have to clear to sustainably feed our planet?